Have you ever thought much about what makes up a sheep? They're very very dumb animals. I ask you, have you ever gone to a circus and seen a group of trained sheep? I don't think so. Sheep have a very natural way of flocking together, an instinct that brings them together. They seldom act independently. And if they get separated from the flock, they don't know how to survive. They're ill-prepared for being on their own. They have nothing in their makeup that allows them to defend themselves, like a shell or claws. They do have wool, but that works to their detriment, in that the enemy can grab a hold of the wool and tear them down. Even their voices are kind of whiny and wouldn't scare anything. They're willful and dumb and stubborn. And this is what we are compared to in the Bible, that we are sheep. But not only that, the shepherds don't fare very well either. At the time of Jesus, they were seen as being the lowest in the terms of a profession. Their testimony wasn't accepted in a court. They were seen as bandits and thieves. You probably wouldn't be very happy if your son or daughter came home to say that they were going to marry a shepherd. And yet, this is what the Bible and Jesus draw upon, that we sometimes can see and be compared to. If you kind of look back over what I've just said, it's kind of, hope you take it on the humor side. But the aspect is, yes, this is what we are compared to in the Bible. And as a people, we can be very much like sheep. We can get along with the crowd and not make our own thoughtful decisions about things that we and how we would look at it. We get caught up with the rat race of our work and our lives, that we just move from one thing to another. And we subscribe to the economic philosophy that more things that we have, the happier we will be. We can be herded into this idea that we create our own successes. As these things carry over into our spiritual lives, we think we can do things that get us closer to God. We are achievers, but we have only learned that we can never achieve enough. The happiness that comes from achieving is never quite within our reach, because we're always seen to need more and more and more success and achievement in our lives. And that is the reason why God is laughing at us today. That is why Jesus has chosen the imagery and the metaphors that he has. The whole point of the shepherd and the sheep is that we can stop trying to achieve a life and to choose instead to receive a life. Because we are like the sheep, we have to depend on the shepherd more than we do. We think we can do it by ourselves, but the more that we need and more that we grow, the more we need to be dependent on God. Jesus is the good shepherd, the one that leads his sheep. Jesus knows the sheep by their name, and in speaking to them, the sheep listen. They know his voice, and they follow him. It is so important that we, you and I, realize that Jesus is talking to us. We must learn to recognize his voice from all the din that is out in this world, to be able to let him kind of talk directly to us as to where he wants us to go and where he wants to lead us. In this world of ours, there are so many voices. We need to be able to separate God's voice from the others by letting Jesus lead us, by giving into his leadership, with trust that he will protect and guide us and do all the wonderful things that Psalm 23 tells us by listening to his voice, by simply being grateful for all the care that he gives us. We can free ourselves from many of the burdens of this life, the anxiety of trying to be a great success at work, in marriage, in parenting, in life itself. We can take the time to look at the wonderful graces that God has given us as a part of our lives, the gifts that God has given, the graces that have been received, and concentrate on the positive aspect of God in our lives. Sure, there has been sickness and death and discouragement, but by giving God all that we have, by finding the ways God has been good to us, by listening to God's voice, we might eventually find the happiness and peace that we have been working so hard to get on our own. Jesus says, "I came that you may have life and have it abundantly." We can look up and see God smiling at his sheep, for they have given in to him. They have heard his voice. They have become one with him. And in that oneness is the happiness that he offers us. In our second reading from St. John, he picks up the idea that we are all like children. He doesn't use the sheep image, but children at the time of Jesus were considered much like sheep in that they were possessions and they were to follow and do what they were told to do. And John stresses that through our baptism, we have become children of God. We are reborn. And the hope that John stresses is that we will one day be like Jesus and be raised and to be with him in the pastures of the heavenly kingdom. And the first reading is the only reading that does not use the metaphor of sheep, but it talks about witnessing. And if we are to think about being a witness in the court today, we are simply to tell the truth and not embellish it. And how do we give witness to God? How do we do that? We do that by following Jesus and the good news that he teaches us. How God is creating good in our lives is what we want to be able to discern, to be able to see that God is there. He wants to lead us. He wants to create good in our lives, and we need to be able to show others by letting others know that we are thankful for all that God has given us. They will know that we are Christians by our love. We sing that song many times. And the love of each other is what we're talking about. The love of God, the image of Jesus as a cornerstone of a new covenant, one which the Hebrews had rejected, is a reflection on the psalm that we sung today. And when Luke says there is salvation in no one else, he is saying that Jesus died for all. And it is only through his death that there comes salvation. Let us then be filled with gratitude, with the tender care that the Lord has been showing to us, the compassion and the love that Jesus offers unconditionally to us if we just follow him.